Before you even woke up today, an algorithm may have already made decisions about your life. It might have decided what news you will see, which job applications get rejected before a human ever reads them, which products appear in front of you, which videos capture your attention for the next hour. You probably didn't notice. Most people don't. Artificial intelligence now quietly sits inside the systems that shape modern life. From the way companies hire workers to the way social platforms decide what billions of people see every day. And for years, the story we were told about AI sounded almost perfect. Machines would remove human bias, make better decisions, build a smarter world. But something strange has started to happen. The more powerful these systems become, the less transparent they seem. Even the engineers who build them sometimes struggle to explain exactly how certain decisions are made. And that leads to a question that feels increasingly uncomfortable. If artificial intelligence is already influencing our work, our information, and our choices, who is actually in control? Because the darker side of artificial intelligence does not begin with robots attacking humanity. It begins with something much quieter, a world where invisible systems shape human decisions, and almost nobody realizes how much power they already have. And once you start noticing that pattern, it becomes very difficult to unsee. Artificial intelligence was never introduced to the world as something dangerous. In fact, it was presented almost as the opposite. For years, the dominant narrative surrounding AI was one of efficiency, progress, and technological optimism. The idea was simple and compelling. Machines would take over repetitive work, improve decision-making, and help humanity solve problems that once seemed impossibly complex. Hospitals could diagnose diseases earlier. Companies could analyze massive data sets in seconds. Governments could manage infrastructure, transportation, and economic systems more effectively. In theory, artificial intelligence was never supposed to replace human judgment. It was meant to enhance it, to act as an extension of human intelligence rather than a replacement for it. And at first, that story felt not only believable, but exciting. Across industries and everyday life, examples of artificial intelligence quietly improving things began appearing everywhere, with astonishing accuracy, saving commuters hours every week. Streaming platforms learned your preferences so well that they often seemed to know what you wanted to watch before you did. Online stores recommended products you might genuinely need. Email systems filtered out spam so efficiently that most people stopped thinking about it entirely. Even search engines began anticipating questions before they were fully typed. To the average person, artificial intelligence did not feel like a radical transformation of society. It felt more like an invisible assistant, something quietly operating in the background, smoothing the rough edges of modern life. Small improvements here, tiny optimizations there, nothing dramatic, just a steady stream of conveniences that gradually blended into everyday routine. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to change, not in a dramatic way, not through some catastrophic failure or widely visible malfunction. The shift was subtler than that. It was more like a change in atmosphere, something you could sense before you could fully explain it. Over time, researchers studying these systems began noticing unusual patterns. Workers interacting with algorithmic management systems started reporting strange experiences. Even some engineers who helped build these technologies began admitting that the systems were behaving in ways they could not always predict. The systems were not just assisting human decisions anymore. In subtle ways, they were beginning to influence them, and that is where the story starts to become unsettling. Because the real danger of artificial intelligence may not be the dramatic scenario that science fiction often imagines. Machines suddenly rebelling against humanity, or robots overtaking civilization. The darker possibility is quieter than that, more subtle, more psychological, a slow transformation rather than a sudden collapse. What happens when systems designed purely to optimize efficiency begin shaping the behavior of the people using them? What happens when algorithms begin influencing what information we see, what choices we make, and even how we define success? What happens when invisible systems quietly determine which job applications are seen first, which news stories rise to the top of a feed, which products appear in front of consumers, and which voices are amplified or ignored in public conversation. And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all emerges only when you look a little closer. What happens when these decisions are made by systems so complex that even their creators struggle to explain exactly how they arrive at certain outcomes? Modern machine learning models are often described as black boxes. Engineers can train them, test them, and observe their outputs. But the internal reasoning behind certain predictions can remain difficult to interpret. That means some of the most influential decision-making tools in modern society operate with a level of opacity that would have been unthinkable in previous generations of technology. Artificial intelligence does not need to dominate the world in order to transform it. It only needs to quietly reshape the systems through which decisions are made. And once those systems become deeply embedded in everyday life, in workplaces, in financial institutions, in social platforms, in healthcare systems, in hiring processes, their influence becomes almost invisible, which raises a possibility that few people considered when this technology first began spreading across the world. Artificial intelligence might not change society through dramatic confrontation. It may change it quietly, by slowly rewriting the rules that shape human choices underneath the surface. And the moment we begin to realize how deeply those rules have changed, we may discover that the transformation has already happened. At its core, artificial intelligence is built on pattern recognition. Machine learning systems analyze enormous amounts of data in order to identify correlations that human beings might overlook. Instead of following rigid instructions like traditional software, these systems learn from examples. They observe behavior, detect statistical relationships, and gradually adjust their predictions in order to improve performance over time. In many contexts, this process can produce results that appear almost extraordinary. AI models can analyze medical images faster than doctors, detect subtle signals in financial markets, predict equipment failures in industrial systems, and even generate complex language that resembles human communication. But hidden inside this impressive capability is a crucial detail that often goes unnoticed. Artificial intelligence does not learn from reality itself. It learns from data created by human societies. That data contains far more than simple information. It contains the entire history of human decision-making, including the biases, inequalities, assumptions, and imperfections embedded within it. When AI systems learn from that data, they do not simply inherit human knowledge. They also inherit the limitations and distortions present in the systems that produced it. And once those distortions are translated into algorithms, they can expand in ways that human decision-making alone never could. Researchers studying automated hiring systems have discovered that certain AI models trained on historical employment data can unintentionally replicate patterns of discrimination that existed in the past. If a company historically hired more candidates from certain backgrounds, the algorithm may learn to treat those patterns as signals of success, even if the developers never intended to create a biased system. The historical data itself can encode those patterns into the model's decision-making process. The bias does not disappear. It becomes automated, and because the decision now appears to come from a machine, it may even appear more objective than it actually is. Similar concerns have emerged in other domains as well. Facial recognition systems have demonstrated uneven accuracy across different demographic groups, raising serious questions about how these technologies might perform when used by law enforcement or surveillance systems. Predictive policing algorithms have faced criticism for reinforcing patterns that already exist in criminal justice data. Recommendation systems used by major online platforms have been shown to amplify emotionally intense or controversial content because such material tends to keep users engaged for longer periods of time. Individually, each of these examples may seem like a technical problem that can eventually be corrected, but taken together, they begin to reveal something larger, a pattern in which artificial intelligence intelligence systems are quietly becoming embedded in many of the structures that shape modern society. Hiring systems, financial markets, social media platforms, workplace monitoring tools, advertising networks, transportation infrastructure, and even healthcare decision-making. Each of these systems is designed to optimize something: efficiency, engagement, productivity, accuracy. But optimization itself can create unintended consequences. An algorithm trained to maximize engagement may learn that outrage spreads faster than calm discussion. A workplace monitoring system designed to measure productivity may push employees toward behaviors that appear efficient but undermine creativity or collaboration. A recommendation system trained on past preferences may slowly narrow the range of ideas and information people encounter. None of these outcomes necessarily require malicious intent. They simply emerge from the logic of optimization. And once those systems begin influencing millions of people simultaneously, their effects become much more difficult to observe, predict, or control, which leads to a deeper and more unsettling question. If algorithms are constantly filtering what we see, shaping what we believe, and guiding how we behave in digital environments, how much of our decision-making remains truly independent? While the technical implications of artificial intelligence are often discussed in terms of efficiency and productivity, the emotional consequences of these systems are only beginning to be understood. As AI technologies become increasingly integrated into workplaces around the world, they are quietly transforming the psychological experience of work itself. Automation has long been associated with the promise of reducing human stress by eliminating repetitive tasks and improving efficiency. In theory, AI should allow workers to focus on higher-level thinking, creativity, and strategic problem-solving. But the reality unfolding in many workplaces is more complicated. Instead of simply replacing repetitive tasks, AI systems are increasingly being used to monitor, measure, and evaluate human behavior in ways that previous generations of technology could never achieve. Modern workplaces now employ algorithmic management systems capable of tracking employee activity with extraordinary precision. Software can monitor keystrokes, analyze communication patterns, measure response times, track productivity metrics, and generate performance scores in real time. In some industries, these systems determine work schedules, assign tasks, and evaluate worker performance without direct human supervision. For employees, this can create a strange and unsettling dynamic. Work begins to feel less like a collaboration between individuals and more like participation in a system that constantly measures and evaluates behavior according to invisible rules. Over time, this dynamic can erode a person's sense of autonomy. Workers may begin to feel that their performance is being judged by systems whose logic they cannot fully understand or question. Decisions about promotions, job security, or workload distribution may appear to emerge from algorithms rather than human supervisors. When outcomes feel opaque or difficult to challenge, individuals may gradually experience a loss of psychological safety. The feeling that they can speak openly, take risks, or make mistakes without fear of hidden consequences. Research exploring the psychological impact of algorithmic management has begun to reveal troubling patterns. Some studies suggest that increased exposure to AI-driven monitoring systems may correlate with higher levels of stress, emotional fatigue, and decreased job satisfaction among workers. In certain cases, employees report feeling as though they are competing not only with other humans, but also with the performance expectations generated by machines. A quiet question begins to appear in the background of daily life. What happens if the system decides I am no longer necessary? Unlike previous technological revolutions, artificial intelligence does not only replace physical labor, it also affects cognitive work, activities that were once believed to require uniquely human capabilities. Writing, programming, data analysis, design, customer support, and even aspects of creative production are increasingly influenced by AI systems capable of performing similar tasks with remarkable speed. For many workers, The uncertainty surrounding AI is not simply about job loss. It is about identity. People invest years developing professional skills, building careers, and defining their sense of purpose through their work. When new technologies emerge that appear capable of performing those same functions more efficiently, individuals may begin to question the long-term stability of their roles in ways that previous generations rarely experienced. And uncertainty can be psychologically exhausting. The more advanced AI systems become, the more individuals may begin to feel that the ground beneath their professional identities is shifting, not suddenly, but steadily. Artificial intelligence is often described as one of the most transformative technologies ever created. That description may well be accurate, but throughout history, every transformative technology has reshaped society in ways that were difficult to predict at the moment of its introduction. The printing press changed the spread of information. The Industrial Revolution transformed labor and economic structures. The Internet reshaped communication and global connectivity. Artificial intelligence may now be triggering a transformation of similar magnitude. But the most difficult questions surrounding AI may not be technical. They may be human. Technologies do not exist in isolation. They are embedded within economic systems, political institutions, corporate incentives, and cultural values. If AI systems are deployed primarily to maximize efficiency, profit, and engagement without careful consideration of their social consequences, the result may be a world that feels increasingly optimized but also increasingly impersonal. A world where decisions are faster but harder to question. A world where human judgment gradually yields to statistical prediction. And once those systems become deeply embedded in the infrastructure of everyday life, reversing their influence becomes extremely difficult. Artificial intelligence is not a distant future scenario. It is already part of the present. The question facing society today is not whether AI will shape the world. It already is. The real question is whether human beings will remain thoughtful enough, cautious enough, and self-aware enough to guide that transformation responsibly. Because if we fail to do so, the darker side of artificial intelligence may not look like destruction. It may look like adaptation.z, quiet, efficient, and almost impossible to undo.